Okay, it is 7:15 and I am calling to order the December 19th, 2024 meeting of the Bolton Finance Committee. It's our regular meeting. And we have present as members of the committee, Ross Lally, myself, Chair, Bob Mora, Amanda Gordon, Ashley Phelan, and Rhea, whose last name escapes me at the minute.
Klein.
Klein. And Tyler Egner. I was gonna say Egbert, but no, Egner. Close. At least I got the egg part right. And then we also have present online Jill Collins, our CFO, Jim Rupert, Town Administrator, and Mary, our clerk, for this committee and a whole bunch of others. So we can get started with public participation. I do not see any members of the public present in the room or online. So we can move on to approval of our minutes for the November 21st, 2024 regular meeting.
I'll make a motion.
So Rhea made a motion to approve the minutes as is. Amanda seconded that. So any further discussion of the minutes? Thank you, Jill. And just to make a note that we just had Rodney Fournier, first selectman, join us at 7:17. And he joined in person in the town hall. So do I have any other comments on minutes? Then hearing no further comments, I will call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, passes unanimously by all members of the finance committee present. So now we can get on into our elected official and town staff reports, and we'll start with the tax collection summary.
You give me 1 second, I can bring that up. Jim, do
Yes.
you want to talk to it or do you want me to?
If you don't mind, Jill, I'll let you do it.
Okay, you want me to bring it up, Ross? I just have
Yes,
to.
please.
Okay, hold on 1 second and I will do that.
Like all of us here have it, but just in case there's anybody watching through Community Voice or whatever, just so they can see as well. And I know that with the tax collection summary, we do have to remember, that we have to account for the extra monies that we took in. It's making it look like we're doing better than we actually are.
Can you see? Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so we're at 106.89%, which Ross said that we are over, which we all know change. We did two groups, if you will, for the large one, the 1,300 letters that we got back, we cut it in two, and those checks were cut and sent out last week, I believe. And then we did another set that was approved last night, just a small amount last night. And then Lori sent over 14 more letters today that will include in next week's meeting to be paid out.
Yeah, when you say next meeting, it's the next AP meeting with the selectmen, correct?
Correct. That'll be Monday, I believe. Is it Monday? I believe it's Monday.
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's Monday, the 30th, December 30th. So they'll
Yeah.
go.
Oh, that's not next week.
I'm sorry.
It's for your New Year's Eve
I was
party.
just bumping myself ahead a week.
Yeah.
We still have Christmas to get through.
So there's I believe there was 14 more in that batch. So that will be processed for the next, along with the next AP. And then at that point, I have talked to Lori about, she's gonna do up a spreadsheet that shows all the letters, what went out and what was supposed to be, what went out in letters, then what came back and what was paid out, and then what was, so there's some motor vehicles or other taxes that
Yep.
we use the money to pay for. So she's gonna do a spreadsheet so that everybody can see how it all went, came out.
Okay, so that
Then-
would be for like our January meeting, correct?
I don't know. Lori hasn't given me a date for that, so I don't know when that's gonna happen. But at that point in time, then I'll be able to do the adjusting entry and take the money that is going to be used to pay next year's taxes out of the current tax levy so that that number will go down and
Yeah.
be reality, if you will.
Okay.
And I won't ask you to repeat all this when we get to the tax issue under ongoing business.
So what I understand, or what I think I heard, is that the process might be complete by January, might not.
So,
Is that
so
what I heard?
well, we're not gonna do a cutoff date so that people have to, that absolutely have to be, it could go on, well, it may go on till July, if you really want to know the truth. They're still sending in their letters now. So what will happen is I will take the number, once this last batch goes out and Lori doesn't have any more, she gives us the spreadsheet. I will then do whatever's left over that's going to be used for next year's taxes that people said they
Yep.
want to roll over to next year's taxes. I will do an adjusting entry to put that amount, that dollar amount, into a liability so that it won't show up in your current taxes. So that number of your current taxes, the one that's at 106.89, will not be that high of a percentage once that adjusting entry is done. Did that help, Priya?
Bob, you have something?
The process is basically done.
The process,
Yeah.
okay.
So just a quick question, Jill. We do have an effective cutoff date at the end of the fiscal year now. Is that
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. Yes, that would be the cutoff date. Yes,
So if we don't receive anything by that date, then they're getting a credit
correct.
as opposed to a check.
Correct. Or if someone said, I'm moving and, I didn't do it, but I'm not gonna have any taxes to credit, then even if that happened after July 1.
Yeah.
They said, show up as owing us anything, then we would cut a check.
Okay. Amanda, you have a question?
Yeah, Jill, are we gonna adjust the number for the checks that went out too?
So, no, that has already come off of that current taxes. So when we
Oh.
sent the taxes, the money out, it didn't, the account it came out of was the current tax account.
Okay, but not the one we're looking at because that's effective as of 11/30, so it'll be our next one.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. And what I thought I would do too is, well, I guess, Lori's gonna do, so what'll happen is I'm gonna have another line in there that, so, how you refunds and return payments. I think I'm gonna put another one in there as a separate one from these regular ones that we have, so you can see it as separated out from the so I will have another line in there as a negative number, reducing the current.
Yeah, because that would help to make it more real if we know what see the amount coming out as opposed to just seeing this number going down and not having a
Correct.
reference.
Absolutely, yep. But I want to keep it separate too.
Yep.
So I will do another line there so that you'll see exactly what it was.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if there's any more questions.
I mean, the rest of it looks like business as usual
Yep.
for this point in the fiscal year, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions on tax collection? Because if not, we could move on. I'm not seeing any in the room.
So here's our other revenue. Everything's really pretty much on schedule. I haven't heard of anything not coming in that we anticipated. Oh, sorry, was there a question?
No, sorry.
Sorry.
No, we have a little issue going on with the lights and Rodney came to the rescue.
Oh. It was the ghost,
Yes.
town hall ghost.
Over the fire.
Okay, we're ready for the next one.
Okay. So the
I'm
interest,
sorry, did anybody have any questions on the revenue statement? I meant we're ready to discuss, we were having a sidebar conversation about the lights, so I just wanted to bring us back to whichever page you wanted us to look at. Sorry, Jill.
yep, no problem. So does anybody have any questions regarding any other revenue? No, okay, so the interest has gone down a little because the money has gone down a little.
It's gone down,
Yeah.
the rates I think are starting to go down a little, but they may not go down as slowly as we thought next year from
Yeah, you
the latest Fed.
plummeting. No, mine are plummeting. No. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going down, but still, it's minor. My personal about 1% down for their 5 and change, it's 4 and change now.
That's a lot.
It is,
But not as much.
so it's a 20%,
We'll see.
but ours don't necessarily. Personal ones don't track to this because of the
Right.
contract that we
Right.
have.
Oh, the contract is still variable, so.
Yeah,
So this is,
still making good money on our money compared to what it would have been if we got.
What did we budget, 500?
yes,
It'll be close.
so that we haven't got the bank rec done for November yet, so we don't have that November figure, but it will be down somewhat. But definitely December. will be much-
December, Jill? Oh.
Sorry, No,
Right,
no,
next page,
November,
sorry.
December will be substantially less. I think we're around 18 million right now.
Which will then mean the interest rates will be a little lower than this month, even if the interest payments that we're getting will be lower just because of that drop. Even if we didn't have a change in interest
Then
rate,
you get the January infusion.
yeah, oh, that's right, too, from the supplemental. bills.
Supplemental, yeah. so
Correct.
it brings it back up, so not bad, I think we're in good shape.
I did ask for that.
Excuse me,
Supplemental.
Tyler's got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just asking, what the supplemental.
Your motor vehicles,
Okay.
taxes that, you know, you didn't, they were not on the list prior to, you required it.
You bought a car, you forgot, so after the cutoff date for the regular assessment, so now you get the supplemental one.
Gotcha.
Or like me, where I forgot to renew my registration. It's after the date, and so then I got the supplemental one, so.
Okay.
I
So it's not
did
huge,
ask
but
for that
Well,
grand list. I did ask for the grand list for the supplemental, but I haven't received it yet. And then, well, down there, expenditures. As of right now, man, I don't know if Jim, you want to chime in, but I don't see any problems right now.
I agree, spending looks to be on track with where we would expect.
If anybody has any questions?
Yeah, and the only thing, I'll just make an observation about the elections account. It looks like we've spent less than you would think at this point in the year, but then again, we did use up to $12,500 in grants that we got from the state. So if you were to add that in, we'd be closer to halfway through, through the budget on there.
There's also a really huge learning curve here, trying to understand how to budget for these things, Ross.
Yeah. Which is true, and I had just mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about it more when you see the budget, is that I just found out that we have to do early voting for the municipal elections. 14 days.
Oh.
Yeah, the state's still finalizing some rules, so we didn't think we had to, but they're thinking we. It was on the call today and they haven't made up their minds. They're still talking with their own attorneys about it. But it's still a possibility, so. You
Oh,
can't-
wait a minute now. We're gonna start charging you for a fee for being in the she shed that long. That's a bit much
I'm
now.
gonna stop voting on stuff starting in January, just to make sure I'm safe, since we're talking about money that's in part of my budget, so.
Four
I will
street
recuse
meetings, I don't
myself
know.
from voting.
Yeah.
That's actually a
Too much.
serious observation.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to pass that on because we'll talk about it more when we actually get the budget in, which I'm just finishing up and I just need it reviewed by Sandy and.
And that's a moving target.
It's a moving target because
Yeah, sure.
it's like we still don't have information. Again, it's all new and they're hoping to delay the implementation of this new, the no fault early voting, or absentee ballots until 2026 is what the Secretary of State is hoping, but then it's probably gonna have an impact on the town clerk budget if they choose to do, extend her process to the new absentee ballots. So, whatever, so moving target the next couple of years. What the legislature giveth, they taketh.
And these were the few transfers that we had for the month of November.
Question, Amanda?
So the part-time payroll transfer. We're already over that line item for the year?
Yes. Yep, yes. I don't think when they created the budget, they anticipated Josh coming back and doing some extra work.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a regular expense. Okay,
No, it's for that's for a seasonal or a part-time person that's not payroll, just a regular payroll is permanent, even if they're
Right.
they're permanent payrolls, but Josh is filling in or helping out. I mean, Jim would be able to speak to it more, but I don't think Josh is just in there temporarily helping out, I believe. That was last year's intern.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Any other
Yeah.
question?
Amanda, did you have any questions? I know that you had sent an email to me asking about
Oh.
vendor
well, that
side.
was more in relationship to the AP report from the Board of Selectmen. I had just asked if I could get a running total for, what's their name, Jacobson, our engineering firm.
Yeah.
For the year, just to see how much we paid them so far.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out, because I know we use them a lot and we spend a lot, and so as we head into budget season, like, should we be looking to get our own engineer? Is that even a possibility? Are there any out there looking for jobs? What would that cost? Like, just trying to.
Yeah, is it cheaper to own as
Right.
opposed to keep buying or renting?
Right, and I have no idea what the answers to those are, but I was just wanting to look at some of the numbers to have an idea.
So
Yeah,
if you
some-
look at numbers like that, look at just the raw numbers, because not all of what they do comes out of the general fund. And so they're a pretty mucky vendor because they come out of different funds. We have a reimbursable fund where we take in money and we get checks from individuals because they're gonna pay for them, but through us. So some of it isn't run through
Oh.
general fund, so it's kind of mucky.
Okay.
Still, what you're looking at, it still would work with what you're looking at because you're looking at what we pay them in a whole. But
Right.
when you're looking at it for budgeting purposes for the general fund, it's mucky.
Might be less.
Yeah.
And also.
Except it's not, except it's not
We also
real.
utilize them for the sewer authority.
Although there's a couple of people
Right.
talking at the same time.
But the other thing is it's not an accurate representation of what normally happened, because if you remember during budget discussions last year, we bumped that line item up because we knew we had some projects that we were working on this year. And that's one of the ways that we are using to meet our match for some of the grants is through these expenditures. So I think that would be hard to extract, Amanda.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we shouldn't try necessarily if you want to have that discussion, but I don't think it's a clean relationship like maybe you're thinking.
Yeah, because I could see that, because if you don't spend it in a certain place, you don't get the grant money and it's a loss there.
Yeah, I mean, I also look at like what we have moving forward, and we do have still quite a few projects,
Yes.
right? Like we still have the Lotip grant, and we have the Herrick Park, and we're looking at Town Hall, right? So there's a lot coming, so I don't know that caveat's gonna change any in the next few years, so.
Yeah. I just wanted to also just help explain a little bit, like in inland wetlands, we can often require an applicant to pay for the town engineer for services. So that's kind of
Right.
another example like
Joe
that,
was
like
talking
we were
about.
just talking about.
Yep,
So that does muddy it a little bit, because, yeah, we'll charge them to, we'll pay the town engineer $2,000, but the applicant picks it up, so
Right.
it comes back in.
Yep.
Or
Use them for the sewer too? Sewer part. And to hire an engineer, I'd expect to be paying 150,000 minimum.
yeah,
Mm.
I mean, but some of our AP reports are
Well-
$7,000 to $12,000 for them.
Yeah,
so-
but one of the issues, if I may, this is an issue for the Board of Selectmen rather than this board.
Yeah.
That's right.
As to how it works, so I mean, I'd rather move along.
Yeah. Anything else from Jill or Jim? Because I got a couple of questions. I just wanted to make sure there's nothing else you guys wanted to say.
No, I would say go ahead with the questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to our bid that we have out for demolition. I went through and I read the bid package, and it seems to be quite thorough from what I as a layperson can say. So I just was curious, well, two questions is originally we were going to put out for bid the removal of the greenhouse, and I don't see that covered anymore. So one was a question.
So the green,
Done.
the greenhouse removal is already complete with the exception of a section of railing.
Okay, I wasn't
So-
aware that we had done that, so.
So we got those bids in the first round of bids and we decided to award that project because
Okay.
there was no reason to wait for the entire, if you recall, Ross, what we decided to do was to go back out to bid again
Yep,
after hiring Ty and Bond as a consultant to determine the quantities of hazardous material.
Yep.
And those bids came in much tighter this time than they did the last time.
okay, that's what I just wanted, because I didn't recall following up at an earlier meeting about what happened with the greenhouse. I just know that it was originally intended to be part of this, so if we got it done separately, great.
Yep,
And then excuse me?
all done.
Okay, cool. Oh, I just noticed that Kristen Hecht has joined us, so just note that, I don't know, about 7:38. So the other question I did have relating to that, how are we proceeding with getting any responses or so back? Because I see everything's got to be in, done and signed and everything by like the 30th or 31st of December. So I just was curious about the progress.
18th.
We have,
Get due in by the 18th and then signed, then agreed to before the end of the year.
we have received all the bids and we had a meeting today with our consultant and the low bidder. We will be more than likely expanding the scope of their services based on the dollar value of their responses. And the Board of Selectmen has a meeting scheduled for Monday morning to go over all of this and actually award the bid and talk about several other things.
All right, good. So just getting nervous because it's the end of the year, so I'm glad to hear that it's still progressing. Because it would be rather embarrassing if that $1 million just sort of disappeared on us instead of being spent.
We're not sleeping much, but we have it well under control.
Okay, good. Any other comments, questions? And I guess if not, we can go on to the Board of Ed update.
Sure, I was all ready to butcher the update, Kristen, but.
You can let Kristen butcher it herself.
You can, wow, Ross, wow, Ashley, I have complete faith in you. Ross is gonna get
Now
a
you
special
don't have
gift from
any
me
of
though, if
Ross,
he's
but
not
that's a whole
careful.
Separate story.
Mm-hmm. Okay, am I sharing?
If you wish,
Can everybody see my screen?
it's coming. There it
There we
is.
go.
Okay, so we are 31% expended compared to 27% expended this time last year. We recognize some savings in salaries and benefits for unfilled positions and changes in insurance. We're still trying to fill positions. We're hopeful. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to try to keep that glass half full. Having said that, we have had some issues with the heating system at Bolton Center School. Jim could probably speak to this more articulately than I can, but I'll do my best here. Basically, the old system talking to the new system doesn't work that well in, I guess, as basic terms as I can explain it. They found during the installation process that we had a zone controller in the elementary wing, which is still part of the old system, had failed, which was causing a lot of issues. And it was recommended that we also replace the one right next to it because they were already running the wiring. We had some other things that they found that were also problematic that needed to be taken care of. So we needed to transfer $18,231 to cover the cost of those repairs so that the heating system at Center School is working properly. The board did waive, and I believe you have that memo, or you are aware of that through the memo. They waived the bid because we were already using USA Mechanical for the install of the new part of the system. And because it's proprietary, the emergency nature of it, and the fact that they were already doing the work, they waived the bid on that. So we're hoping at this point that things are straightened out, but I will share with you that, and you will see it when we eventually get to Kappa, whenever that's going to be. John is adamant, is a good word, to continue moving along with these projects to get the whole thing replaced, and to try to get moving on phase 2 as soon as possible, because it is just problematic with the old system and the new system. Jim, did that about sum it up?
Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to find the unmute button.
Thanks. Questions for me?
Questions? Maybe you look thoughtful and
No, I just didn't realize we bought instruments for our students, because I remember having to buy my own.
Just the large ones.
Oh,
The
yeah.
larger instruments we purchase, there's no, having a kid transport something like that back and forth, it'll be broken in 2 days.
oh yeah. So if we have no other questions for Kristen, is there anything else under town and official reports? And so if not, then we can move on to our ongoing business with the tax issue and other good stuff. I think I want to ask Jill to go and repeat everything she went over earlier. Sure, it was a very thorough job on explaining, where we are and what the next steps are. So only comment I have on that is we're getting to the point where we're gonna have a new grand list that we're gonna have to start working with in the next, probably the next, what, 2 months or so? Cause I think it's around February. We start getting the grand list data. So I'm hoping that we have some process in place so that before Rodney puts his name on it and before we go and send it to the state, that we have some process that demonstrates that there were some checks that were done and that we're comfortable with the thoroughness of it, and that there is a backup of that file in case we do have any questions. So that's just something I just want to be, I'm very concerned about it. I don't want to get into the same fix that I've had. I'd say 3 or 4 constituents talking to me about this, and they're still PO'd quite a bit about this, and they want to know what happened, and they also want to know why the assessor still has her job here. So it's like kind of feelings running, still high with some people. So I'm just bringing that up so we're aware of, what the situation is, and that as we get into the budget season, I'd like to make sure we can assure people that it's not gonna happen again. Because I'm just worried it's gonna take a long time to pass the budget this time.
Because of
All this and,
yeah.
yeah, because we did it in the year before last, 1 pass through it. Last year it was 2, which surprised us, and I think the feelings are running higher now still than they were last year, so I worry about it being a 4 or more. And
Well, it all depends on the bottom line.
yeah,
I mean, you can dress it up any way you want or argue it, and when it gets down to it, it's what my taxes are gonna be.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's
Yeah.
bottom line.
But we're not anticipating a decrease, so
no,
No, hopefully not a 10% increase.
no.
hopefully,
No,
but
yeah, I get it.
One budget vote did.
I mean, I do think to that comment that the Board of Selectmen needs to discuss policies that would, solve that problem. So whether it's, document retention policies that are approved by the board or something, so that we can say that we've done something.
Or even short term, just something specific to this process with the grand list, if we wanted to keep it simple, ideally it would be the bigger picture, but short term, something at least specific to this, yes.
You don't usually write a policy that's like to a very, very specific situation. I mean, we could as a stopgap, but
And the policy is a retention policy
Right,
on
broadly.
all data, and I think,
and storage,
Yeah.
retention and
Well, it's more
storage.
than that.
I think the board is well aware of that. I
You
mean,
could you can retain bad data and not have any way to check it, so it goes more.
We also
than
have to
just-
check
You have to have the
balance.
process in and who's overseeing it,
once you have it, it's pretty easy to check.
yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up for awareness, because I'm just very leery of it, and I don't want us to be in that embarrassing position of having somebody in the state tell us there's an issue in the news before we're aware of it, so. That was it for me on the tax issue. I don't know if there's anything else. Jill, you did a really good job explaining it all. But again, thank you.
Welcome.
We're not seeing any other comments on anything about communications. Other than what we've already talked about, and how do we make it real?
Well, so while I was eating a snack before I came, I was thinking about a 1-pager on the budget, budget schedule. I mean, I would need the data to put one together. But it is still my plan to try and pull together a 1-pager that we can share with the public on the budget process and the schedule for all the meetings, so that it's at least as transparent as possible.
But generally, we work backwards from date we set, budget date, and then we get it back. Once we do that, then it just falls into
Yeah.
place. You can pop that off.
Yeah, I mean, but I wanna include the CAPA budget meeting. I mean, it all depends on timing, right? But I would like to include the CAPA budget meetings, and maybe we end up doing 2
Hopefully, we'll have the
1-pagers,
couple meeting dates tonight.
right?
Yeah,
And then obviously I would have to get the BOE budget workshop meetings from Kristen and the Board of Selectmen budget meetings from Jim and Rodney. And then there's obviously the finance committee meetings that fall in line after all that.
Yeah, those will fall in line
Yeah,
after.
and some of the stuff you could give a general time frame, without the specific dates, like this is what's gonna happen in March, this,
Yeah,
February, March, April, and May, and then we'll fill in the dates as we get to know them.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I do know other towns release something, in early January. It may behoove us to try and get these schedules done earlier so that we're not.
Well,
I mean, it's always our plan to get stuff done earlier. I know it's hard, but,
if you plan it early, you have a chance of doing it on time. If you plan it late, you have a much better chance of missing the dates, so. I'd rather go with push for as early as we can as opposed to letting it go later.
I was just looking in my packet for CAPA meeting dates, but I don't see them.
What you're gonna say?
No, it's next
That's on,
category.
that's on next,
I know, I just.
we're going to make them.
Oh, we don't have a proposed.
We don't have a proposal,
Oh.
we just know that there was we'll get to that one next, communication.
Sorry.
Anything else in communications, just so we can keep things moving. So I know this is our last meeting of the year, and I was chastised by Mr. Nora next to me about talking too much and keeping the meeting going at the last one, so
Well,
I'm moving it along.
I did it in a gentlemanly fashion.
Yeah,
too. I mean,
and that's why I remembered it, because if you had been mean, I would have said, I'm gonna keep this going as long as possible, so that Amanda would.
Ross, if I could, Amanda, I'm sending you the Board of Ed's dates right now, so you'll have
Thank
those.
you.
All right, thank you. So then if we could see what we could do to get the town states, it would be good. So let's continue with any more discussion on the questions for auditor. I know, Ashley, you were gonna attempt to write something up and I can.
And then I sent you guys
Yeah.
just to scan, because there's probably some more to add,
Yeah.
but do we want to spend some time talking about some of the bigger
Yeah.
themes right now?
If you've got something, if you want to just, write to us about, read to us what you had written for, so the rest of the group is aware.
Sure, it's kind of long, so I'm just gonna kind of summarize
Okay.
it for discussion purposes. The first.
So I put up your original questions again, just so that people can know what you asked and then your response. Or his response, I should say.
Question was really around why we have a qualified opinion, as well as, I think it's a adverse opinion as well around, for quite a number of years, around not having consolidated the fire department. And I noticed from the previous year to the current year audited set of financials that adverse opinion actually dropped, which is a good thing. So I asked him, well, what changed? Because I wasn't aware of anything that changed. And he really said that it's a management judgment. So they added a lot of disclosure in the footnote about basis of presentation. So meaning how do we decide what to include, what not to? And in that basis of presentation footnote, they talked about the judgments that were kind of applied in order to decide why we don't include the fire department. And at the end of the day, I think it just kind of says it's a judgment that the town is comfortable making. However, I just want to chat through as a board or as a finance committee, whether that makes sense. I personally don't think it makes sense. I think that we should have them consolidated in our financial statements. And the reason it's so important is in order to consolidate them, we obviously need their financial information. We fund them, they receive, funds that come from the budget. So I think it's appropriate to have that information available to consolidate. That's just my opinion. If that's not something that the, committee wants to explore further, I understand, because the auditor essentially did sign off on the financial statements this year. But I wanted to raise it for discussion purposes because I just feel as though there probably could be some more transparency there.
And
Amanda?
just to
Ashley?
clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? As a side note, they do have their own EIN, so this money that we give them goes into that account and they have their own EIN. Just as a side note, I don't disagree with you at all, but just so that you know that.
Exactly, which is why it's which is why it's a judgmental area in
Correct.
whether or not you should consolidate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that this is only, or my understanding that this is only the proficiency fund I don't remember how much it,
So
right,
there's the annual proficiency fund, so
Right.
that was 20,000 past
in the
year.
past year, but it's
And
run up
then,
this year.
and then there's the annual contributions made on behalf of the fire department towards service award programs, and that's another 23,000.
Okay. And because the rest of the expenses
And then
that we pay
costs-
for flow through the town, and those are available too. Like when we purchase stuff,
Firefighting equipment.
right,
all
we
that
pay
type
for
of
that through the town, and so we have that, so.
stuff. Correct.
And I mean, we wouldn't necessarily need the fire department's financials. We would need to require the fire department to report back to the town on how they're using.
Just
Not,
use
not
the
true,
ones.
not true.
No?
No, it would be, you
No.
would be their underlying financials, because you would have to consolidate them into
But just for those funds,
Or-
not the money that's they're getting as a 501c3.
Yeah. I don't know that you could separate that.
They should be able to, they should have a separate
well-
account in
They
their
do.
book.
They do,
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
yeah, they should be able to provide us just for the public monies, right? Like, because with their nonprofit monies, they can do whatever they
Yeah, the
want.
funds are not, they're all separated
not
funds, and have been historically, so.
But in my view, in order to figure out how much to fund them,
You would need
you
to.
kind
the
of need
whole-
to know how much they have.
And they're too small to file 990, is that why we don't have public, I mean, I have no idea.
having their own EIN, they have their own auditor, or they should.
They
But
do.
they might be too small to require one.
Yeah,
No, they do.
They have one?
Mhm.
Okay,
no, you're talking about the size of doing a 990,
right,
and I don't.
but even,
Cause I mean, there's a number of places I've looked up, I've been curious about, and you just go
Right.
get their 990.
right. But they have an auditor.
Yeah,
So that's my view, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate there could be, not that I think there's anything wrong, it's just more of a transparency, and
Yeah.
honestly, it's the right way to roll up a set of town financials. So I'm coming at it from more of a audit lens
Right,
and a accurate financial statement lens.
And what's the rationale for not doing that?
I don't know.
You?
I'm sorry?
What's the rationale for not having them,
Consolidated.
You would have, I would defer to the department to come up and
you need to
explain
talk to
that.
Bruce Dixon.
Well, I mean, I
That's a-
think the finance, or the board of selectmen or the finance committee need to do that. I mean, I don't understand this well enough, but,
I mean,
but it's a question I think anybody.
if I may, I don't think you'd have an issue of representatives from the fire department coming forward and explain to you their position. And since, that component that deals with that has the president and so on and so forth. So, and treasurer, and I think those people will be the proper folks to.
Does the
Just
fire
because-
commission serve as the board for the 501c3 as well?
No,
Or there's a separate board?
the fire commission deals only with those dollars that are tax dollars. And
So it's
the
negotiating
distribution
and
of,
setting them
except
up.
for the distribution of, the proficiency fund, no, there's a formula
Right.
for that, and so. But the fire commission is there to deal with those dollars that we appropriate.
Right.
That's it.
So would you guys like to have someone representing the fire department come and talk to us January or whenever?
That would be helpful. I don't have a urgency on it, it's more of just something that.
Jim's got his hand up. Just noticed.
Oh, you're still.
Now he's muted.
I think it's important to understand a couple of things. First of all, the Bolton Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. is an independently founded organization, and they have a contract with the town of Bolton to provide fire service. So the relationship is not necessarily a town entity or a town organization. And I think the other thing that's important to understand is that the fire commission truly is the representative of the Board of Selectmen and the public for the town of Bolton to watch over, not only the finances of the fire department, but regulatory issues on behalf of the town. And that really and truly is the role of the fire commission there. So I think, listen, I think these are great conversations, but I think those things are important to understand for perspective.
Agreed.
Yeah, because we need to know the context that the questions fit into, so that's a good point, Jim.
And I have one other question. What is the practice of other towns that have volunteer fire departments? Is it typical for them to?
It varies from town to town. There
It
is
is.
no
Yeah,
standard.
it's not unusual for towns to have independent fire companies that they contract with for their emergency services. And I can tell you from my years belonging to my hometown volunteer fire department that, we were an independent company. We had the money that we used from the town that was very transparent, that was used publicly, it was audited. But the monies that the Ashford Volunteer Fire Department Inc. had, that was their money and it was never audited. So I don't think that what's happening in Bolton is unusual.
But I do think it's unusual that an entity receives public money and doesn't have to report back to that public money on that public entity on how it's spent.
So I think
That's really the
What
question.
the
that-
balance is and where it goes.
I think that piece is unique, Amanda, because again, and I can compare this to my years in the Ashford Fire Department. We didn't receive a proficiency fund and the sorts of things that we have here in Bolton. What we got was a thank you every year, and we had the opportunity, based on the number of calls that we made, to earn a tax deferral.
The auditor did say it was unusual to have a, adverse opinion. I'm not, that, because most towns don't
Yeah.
have that.
So- Just to kind of move things on with this one, because I know you have some others, is there value then to having someone from the fire department come and talk, knowing
I
what the
appreciate that. I
context
think that would
is?
be great.
If you'd like, I could reach out to Bruce since I know him and ask.
And
him.
or the chairman of the fire
The fire
commission as a,
commission. Maybe both.
yeah.
All right.
The next question was really on policies and procedures, but we've had a lot of discussion on this, so I think we know that there's a long-term probably plan that we need to put in place for policies and procedures and be, able to support the department there. Then we talked about the independent contractor. I think we do need to spend more time there, Ross, on.
As far as that one,
It's a W-2 employee.
it's a restructure of the contract, so
Right.
you can blame this not on us, you can blame it on the current administration in Washington, because they made a change very specifically oriented to screw anybody who was a private contractor, force them into being an employee as much as they could. That's my interpretation of it.
So to cover ourselves, I think we have to do a deep dive review of that contract.
It is, it had to be modified, so it would meet the current requirements. And
Yeah.
Jim can attest to that, right? That's
It's about the Board of Economic, or no, there was something that was going live soon where they would be able to see, and then they might pick up on it.
Oh, like a payroll?
Yeah, there's an OPM review that may review this, so it could be a risk, to the town. In terms of having to pay those.
Oh, yeah,
taxes.
that's the issue.
So the contract has already been reviewed by the town attorney. And the contractor and I have already had conversations, and we will be meeting after the first of the year to she's agreed to make the changes that the town attorney has suggested, and we will actually be working on implementing those changes. And that also includes, the way that we pay her will be, one of the things the auditor has said is that the way we pay her now, it kind of looks like a timesheet. And we really will be moving to an invoice rather than something that looks more like a timesheet. So that project is well underway.
Okay,
Okay, great. That's it.
good.
Check the box there. The next one was, so wanted to understand policies that address where we have actual spending that go above a contract. And so we just suggested that we spend time there. I don't know if we have current existing policies that cover
So you
that.
mean have a contract that's for X number of dollars? And then we find out for whatever reason, we request more work, there's it'll be under bid or whatever, we adjust it up.
Would that have to go to the Board of Selectmen for approval?
That's a policy question. I don't know.
I don't know.
I would,
I think he says it doesn't.
oh no.
It would just be the original contract that would. But you're right in
Oh.
thinking that the appropriate policy would be that it would have to go through.
I would think you'd want to, I think you'd want some provision for change controls within the contract, and then there would follow, so whatever our town's procedure is for reviewing it, which I'm not aware of what it is.
Right. So who would know that policy?
That's not something that happens on a regular basis.
Mhm.
That would be a very rare occurrence.
Yeah, should still have a policy for it.
Yeah, so assuming that it did, do we have a policy for it, I guess is the question, regardless of whether it's rare or not.
Correct.
I
Did he
don't,
have,
I don't know if it's in our policy manual off the top of my head, honestly.
Would you mind looking into that, Jim? Not an urgent thing, but just to see if we have any set policies that address that.
Sure.
Did you catch, you got a request, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear. Thank you.
And then we had the Bolton Lakes. So do you remember this one, Ross? I wasn't fully tracking because I'm not familiar with the Bolton Lakes Association.
I am
He
not
was suggesting that
familiar
we
with the
separate.
details of it, but yes, they wanted some. The auditor said he thought it would be a good idea to clarify the financial arrangement between the Bolton Lakes Association and with the town of Bolton, so it was clearer as to the cash flow is what I recall at this point.
I might reach back out to him and ask to
Yeah.
clarify that one a bit, just because I was not fully recalling what the issue was, but essentially we fund them and maybe shouldn't, or maybe it should be done in a different way.
When we reach out and we can put it on the agenda for next month.
Mhm.
Cause I'm not as clear about that one either at this point, since it's been a while, and as you know, his comments on the others. That it? Or,
And then I think he had a general comment that was, as a town, could we simplify the way we do things from a budgeting standpoint? Does, the amount that goes into capital or the amount that goes through, the loans, should that be separated from the operating budget? And I did think that was a valid comment.
did he mean physically separated in different bank accounts, or did he mean just?
The way that we budget for it. So if you think about the tuition that we receive from the Columbia students, that goes through the 80% of it goes through
Right.
the debt side
Right.
of things. Just to make it simpler, should that just all go through the operating budget?
So let me just clarify.
Unfortunately, that one's unique.
Let me just clarify that. There is a separate bank account that originally was created for that. He is saying just do a do from instead of a separate bank account. There's a totally separate bank account and really doesn't need to be one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And what they're saying is just adjust it in your accounting process.
Yeah.
Right.
Rather than have a separate
That's
account.
separate
Is that what?
revenue.
Yeah,
Is that
I
what
think
they're
also in the
suggesting?
budgeting- I think also in the budgeting cycle, from the operating budget, we only plan for 20% coming through the Board of Ed operating budget, and then 80%, or maybe I have it flipped, and then 80% goes through.
Because a portion of it is automatically
Next year.
directed to
the high
debt
school.
payment.
In terms of where we recognize. the
Right, but do
revenue.
we really need to do that? Can the tuition that comes from Columbia just go through You know, rather than have all these pieces, you know, in different places.
I think you have to go back and look at when this, the funding was approved. And that was part of the discussion. I don't know if it's in part of the resolution or
Okay.
if it is, then no, you're not gonna change it until
You
the
can't
debt's
simplify?
paid off.
Oh, until the debt's paid off, okay.
So, but I don't, that's a detail that I just don't recall, but I do recall why the process was structured that way. And I would assume somewhere in those documents, it mentions it, just how it's mentioned, I obviously don't recall.
Quick question, when you're about the tuition from Columbia, is that students from another town coming in? Okay,
Right.
okay, just wanted to make sure, okay. How many students? Some come from out of
Varies
town?
from year to year.
Not many? Handful, okay,
Unfortunately, not
I
many.
think I have that information.
but there are some.
Oh, yeah, there's some.
Looking for more,
Uh,
you don't know,
Any other comments?
yeah,
I
that's all.
don't have that.
The only other thing I do recall he mentioned to us was just some of the way that we do bondings and short-term loans, he thought might be better managed through, we pay ourselves as opposed to a third party, and I think he specifically mentioned for the new fire truck, that he felt that, you know, again, it's not an auditing finding, it's just things he said he sees that, you know, he'd offer advice on, and maybe is that someplace where we could set aside the money in Kappa and then pay ourselves back out of it? So we're getting interest on it as opposed to paying the cost to a third party to arrange either a short-term loan or a bond.
Annually too.
Yeah, and we've been doing it annually, and he said that might be one vehicle for, you know, for saving us some money and making money too, because you would eliminate some of the costs associated with getting, you know, making such a loan or short-term bond. And then you would get the interest ourselves on
Yeah,
top of it.
borrowing from yourself.
Instead, you know, so we're borrowing from ourselves and collecting maintaining the use of the money until we need it.
Right.
And we did try to do some of that in the past, so that'd be a good thing for when we have the CAPA discussions to talk about that, and
Borrowing from what fund? Like, where would we borrow them?
no, we would set aside money in CAPA.
So,
It wouldn't
but
be
also,
from our cash reserves.
oh, okay, but it would, so ultimately it becomes a higher. Well, no, I guess either way, it's taxpayer dollars.
It's taxpayers' dollars either way, but
Right,
one
but
way
you
we
get the
keep the
interest,
use
yeah.
of the money and we get the interest as opposed
Just
to
trying to do some of that.
you pay interest and you paid a fee for getting the money to
Yeah.
pay the interest stuff.
Fee too, you underwrite
Yeah.
fees on an annual basis or something
I
like
bet
that.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And he said that's where he said most of it was the real expense was in the fees, make effectively raise the annual percentage rate.
Correct.
Mm.
So that's something to consider because we backed off very quickly last year and cut a chunk out of Kappa to lower the
Yeah,
budget,
we
which
did.
Bob then kicked himself in the butt for suggesting. And we went along with it. So I told them afterwards, they said, yeah, but we agreed. So it's like something again to think about. Because some of it, it's hard to explain to the taxpayers that if you put the money here, you're actually saving future money. And they don't, it's.
Well, it's
don't-
short-sighted.
It's,
Right,
So short-
it's
future
short-
money.
yeah, it's future money and that's
Not
hard
today's
for
money.
anybody to deal with the future because they're less worried about the future me than the current
Right,
me
right.
who doesn't want to pay this much tax now.
Right,
And in return for that, I'll pay more later.
I think they think as part of the budget cycle, they current year operating budget.
But so again, I think it's more if we can explain that type of you know,
Yeah.
reasoning and also maybe not back off on it as quickly. But again, that's just thoughts for the future.
Just want to go back,
Right.
Tyler, right?
Yes.
Tyler? We have 17 students, or 18.
Okay.
At the high school from Columbia.
Okay,
I just found it,
okay,
okay?
gotcha, thank you.
So Mary, I don't know if you heard that.
Oh,
I would just like to call to everyone's attention as well. Thank you, Ria, for finding the number because I was looking for it as well. I believe that RAM is now also going to be an option for Columbia students come next year.
Wow. It just gets better.
how do we make ourselves not, well, no, this is not the
That's just a
place.
separate discussion.
Yep,
So anything else under the auditor stuff? In that case, I will move on to new business. We can get the Kappa meeting dates. This came from a letter that Kathy McCavanagh sent to Jill and to me about when do we think would be good to have, these meetings? And I said, why don't we just ask the committee? And Jill said, let's put it on the, on the agenda. So Kathy had suggested that the first meeting possibly be either January 8th, which is Wednesday, or Thursday, January 9th. And I hopefully you'd be able to set up more than just one meeting.
January 9th is a Board of Ed meeting.
Jim, will the town have stuff prepared? I see the Kappa budget for the BOE in our packet, but
So we have received all of the budget requests from department heads. We just have to put them together in a package.
okay.
And that's Jill and Kathy and I working together to get that done.
So the 8th would be a doable date.
I know Jill has some vacation time scheduled, so I think it's gonna depend on her a little bit too.
It's also the anniversary for me and my ex, but I guess I don't have anything to say.
What does that mean, Ross?
Popped up on
What
my
does
phone,
that
my
mean? What does
anniversary.
that have to do with my vacation? So I have tried to.
I'm gonna
put
get out of
things
this
together.
dark halfway, okay? Well, all
Go
right,
ahead, Joe.
thanks for letting me
Wow.
know.
I've tried to put things together, but have been interrupted daily. When Bob.
I only interrupt you once a week when I happen to be in the
No,
office.
I didn't
over
say,
there.
but Bobby, when you asked me the other day, has things quieted down? No. So
No.
always
Yeah.
fills the spot.
Yeah, there we go. I shouldn't have asked. I know,
I have
I was
tried,
hoping it had.
thank you for your hope, but I have tried, I have started putting things together. It just gets interrupted. So that's all I'll say. I will do my best to have things for whenever you start a meeting. How's that?
So is the 8th reasonable, or do you want to go to the following week? It's one of those things we don't want to go too long with it, and
I
I
was
think
gonna say the sooner the better.
we're gonna need
We're
at
gonna have
least,
another
what,
meeting,
2
yeah.
meetings?
Gonna need at least 2 meetings, yes.
Indeed.
So do you want to see the 8th and then this a week later or 2 weeks later?
Probably the 23rd, because the following week we have our regular meeting, right? The 16th.
16.
Yeah. So do you want to do the 23rd, the 8th and the 23rd,
Rhea and I cannot do the.
or the 22nd rather?
It works for me.
We just have to remember that we have to check to make sure that there's nothing else going on those dates though.
Well, we can always use meeting room A.
Yeah. We don't
Sure,
have to meet here.
true.
We're not a big crowd.
So I'll have that as my takeaway. I'll just reach out to Kathy tomorrow
Tentatively. we'll put it.
and just
What
say,
time?
and we, at what time?
7.
Yeah, about 7, because, yeah.
7 o'clock. And then we'll find out where.
So I'm sorry, what was the second date?
The 8th is the first, the second is the 22nd. They're both in January, so January 8th, January 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
What's Kappa stand for?
But it's a capital budget.
Oh, okay, gotcha,
It's just a, actually,
gotcha. Didn't know it wasn't accurate.
no, it's one of the few.
It does stand for
It's like
something.
capital allocation.
And it's actually,
No, capital.
I made that up.
yeah,
Capital budget.
it's the capital budget.
I believe
It's
it.
actually the term's obsolete because this is,
Fix that.
it's just something we're familiar with,
Right, we just kept the name.
There used to be a separate
committee.
committee that was formed just to do that, but then this committee turned from a board to a committee and took over that.
So it's a special meeting of us to do Kappa, special meeting of the finance committee to do the Kappa. Okay, 22nd. Okay, then I think we got that out of the way. So if there's nothing else, I'm gonna take a motion to
I will so
adjourn.
move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do I have a second?
Or
And it's seconded by, motion made by Bob Morris, seconded by Amanda Gordon. So we are adjourned at 8:19. All right, thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.